This guy made over $660 million off YouTube, but he doesn't make videos. His name is Scooter Braun, and you might know him as the guy who discovered Justin Bieber, or the guy who bought Taylor Swift's song catalog, or the TV producer, or the startup investor. Scooter does a lot. And I'm going to tell you exactly how he did it. And by the way, this is probably one of the most interesting podcasts I've ever done, because I shared Scooter's story on social a few weeks ago. Millions and millions of you saw it. And I had quite a few people very close to Scooter Braun reach out to me and share all kinds of stories. So I'm going to give you guys all that today. Much of this never been told before, definitely not in one place. So Scooter's story starts all the way back in 2002. Scooter's a kid in college, and he's trying to break into the music business. There's just one problem. He's got zero connections. He's got to find a way in. Now, he's been throwing parties for a few years just to make extra money on the side, and he's actually gotten really good at it. These parties are some of the best in town: concerts, raves, fashion shows. Pretty soon, these are the biggest college parties, and maybe even beyond, the biggest music parties you can go to in Atlanta. And then the music heavyweights start to take notice. This record executive named Jermaine Dupri, who's running a label called So So Def Records, offers Scooter a job running the marketing team at his label. So Scooter can't pass this up. He drops out of college and gets straight to work. He quickly learns everything there is to know about the music business. He's really working hard, soaking it all in, making a lot of connections. And fast forward to 2007, our boy ditches the job and scrounges up $1,800 to set up his own talent management firm. He calls that firm SB Projects. And pause here for 1 second, because SB Projects is the company that Scooter will eventually sell for well over $1 billion and make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars along the way. And that $1,800 investment that I just mentioned, that is the only outside capital, the only seed capital he will ever need. So SB Projects is now up and running. He's got a talent management firm all his own, and now he just needs to find some talent. And that's when he spots a kid making music on YouTube. And that kid's name is Justin Bieber. So Scooter tracks down Bieber's mom, gets them on a flight to Atlanta, and inks a record deal for Justin. And then he does something insane. He goes full throttle on social media, setting up gigs wherever he can get them, and then posting all of the footage on YouTube. And I know this kind of sounds obvious today, guys, but it's unheard of in 2007. YouTube is brand new. No one does this. Within 3 years, Bieber is selling out arenas all over the world. Scooter's on a roll, but we're just getting started. Scooter keeps signing artists. He signs Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, J Balvin, so many more. Each of them is topping the charts. And behind the scenes, Scooter is thinking way, way beyond music. He's handling touring, TV shows, movies, endorsements, social media, sponsorships, and investments, turning each act into a cash-gushing music machine. And he's making millions just taking a small slice off every deal. And now it's time to put all that cash to work. So SB goes on a shopping spree. He buys a stake in Drake's management company. He buys a huge country music label. He invests early in Uber, Dropbox, Spotify. Scooter's diversifying, building a huge stack of assets. And all the pieces are in place. There's just one more thing to do. In April 2021, Scooter's phone rings. The founder of Hybe is calling, one of the biggest music companies in the whole world. And Hybe wants Scooter's business, all of it. They agree on a price. I'll tell you what that price was in just a minute. And Scooter sells the company and clears over $660 million off that one deal. Not bad for an $1,800 investment. So that's the version of the story that I shared on social media. The quick version that I put out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. Millions and millions of you saw it, and I got a lot of feedback. And like I said, a lot of people who are inside Scooter's orbit, worked for him for many years, reached out to me in the DMs, and they wanted to give me detail on what really happened, deal by deal, dollar by dollar. Some of this stuff is so wild, it's actually hard to believe. I had to see it all for myself, the text, the documents. At one point, Scooter actually uses a tarot card reading to make $300 million on just one deal. So most of what I'm going to share now comes directly from insiders who were literally in the rooms where this all happened. Let's start with the early days. So I'm going to take you back now to a time where Scooter almost lost everything before he even really started. So this story is back in 2006, 2007 timeframe, and Scooter discovers this young artist named Asher Roth, who would eventually break out with a song called I Love College. And you guys might remember that from 2009, or just go to YouTube, check it out. So that would come a few years later, but in 2006, Scooter signs Asher to a management deal. Then Scooter discovers Justin Bieber and signs him too. And of course, you all know what happens with Justin Bieber. He's going to go on to become one of the biggest artists in the whole world. But again, that won't happen for a few years. And between now and then, Scooter's got to bankroll these artists with no money coming in. As you can imagine, signing artists actually costs a lot of money, and Scooter's paying for everything out of pocket. He's literally paying for these artists to live, food, travel, probably wardrobe allowance, right? So they can perform wearing nice clothes. He's even paying for Justin Bieber's hockey league, so little Justin can play ice hockey. This is a huge financial drain on Scooter. He's got that cash flow running backwards. We don't like that. It's flowing the wrong direction. It's flowing out. It's got to flow in. So Scooter is down to his last few dollars. And then Asher Roth sends him a demo of this new song he's just recorded called I Love College. And Scooter loves it. He knows that this will be a hit. So he starts pushing like crazy, harder than ever to get Asher a record deal. But he's struggling. Nobody wants to sign this kid. Labels aren't biting. And then Scooter pulls off one hell of a maneuver. This is the start of the legend of Scooter Braun. Here's what happens. It's 2008. Scooter's at this big music festival, South by Southwest, and he books a dinner with executives from Universal Music. He's going to pitch them on why they have to sign Asher Roth to a record deal. Now, at the same time, Scooter books a dinner with executives from Sony at another restaurant directly across the street. So we've got meetings with two record labels happening at the exact same time across the street from one another. We got a little Mrs. Doubtfire action going on here, but that's not all. Scooter makes sure that the tables at each of the restaurants are at the window, so both label groups can see each other. And then he bounces back and forth between them, negotiating Asher Roth's record deal in real time. So picture this. He's literally playing them off each other throughout this whole dinner, probably an hour or two. So he'll go and talk to the folks at Universal, hypes up the deal, raises the stakes. Then he walks out the door, crosses the road, sits down with the people at Sony, tells them the deal that Universal just offered him 15 seconds earlier. Then he's going back to Universal. He's literally talking to one record label while the other label watches him through a window across the street. You know that expression, if you don't take this deal, I'll walk across the street and give it to your competitor? Scooter is literally doing that. He's walking back and forth trying to lock in a contract for his client. And it's working. I think the opening number is in the low hundreds of thousands. No one could quite remember. I talked to a few people who were there. And then it goes up a bit and it goes up a little bit more. And by the end of that dinner, Scooter Braun, who I remind you at this point is broke as a joke, closes a $1 million record deal for his client Asher Roth. His cut is 15% or $150,000. And that payday keeps him alive. It keeps the business running. Asher's song comes out, I Love College, it blows up. Then Bieber eventually blows up, and that's how Scooter Braun went from rock bottom in the mud, really on the brink of giving up entirely, to building what will become a hit-making and cash-printing music machine. So a few years go by, Scooter continues to grow his music management firm. He signs a lot of other artists that you know, like I mentioned, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, Carly Rae Jepsen, Tori Kelly, Psy. Remember Gangnam Style? You can thank Scooter for that one. And by 2012, Scooter is 30 years old, and his company is now making $26 million a year in profit. Now, side note here, I'm about to get into a lot of information that has never been publicized, numbers and accounting. And when I asked people close to Scooter how much money the company was actually making at various times in this year and that year, the only numbers they could give me were profit numbers. And that should actually tell you guys a lot. Normally, when I ask a company how much money they're bringing in, you get a top line number, you get a sales number. But these guys didn't even know what the top line numbers were year to year. When I asked them, what were you making in 2010, 12, 15? It was always profit. So Scooter is running a very tight ship, bringing in plenty of cash, especially for a 30-year-old. So up until now, SB Project, Scooter's company, hasn't taken on any investors. It's all being built from that initial $1,800 he put in at the very beginning. He hasn't sold any shares in the company. It's all his. And then in 2012, he does his first capital transaction. He sells 49% of SB Projects to this Wall Street firm called Waddell & Reed. And the deal is structured as follows. Scooter gets $140 million in cash. This is secondary financing, which is a fancy way of saying it goes directly in his bank account. Then he gets another $160 million in working capital, and that's money that he can use to grow SB Projects by buying other companies, marketing, whatever. And believe me, he plans to grow. But there's one more very important deal point before this deal can get done. Waddell & Reed, it's a public company, and they have a minimum investment threshold of $400 million. Their investors have set up, for whatever reason, this rule that the smallest deal they can do is $400 million. And that means to get this deal done with SB Projects, they have to invest $400 million. And we're not there yet, right? They've given Scooter $140 million for himself, $160 million in primary capital for growth, and that's $300 million. So they've got to hand over another $100 million just to get this deal to the finish line. So here's what they do. They get creative. They put $100 million in escrow in a bank account. It's just going to sit there. And they tell Scooter, if you ever need this money for any reason, you can use it. And if you do use it, we'll dilute you by the fair market value at that time. So what that means is, in simple math, if a year from now, Scooter decides he wants to take that $100 million out of the bank and spend it on something, and let's say in a year from now, the company's worth $500 million, we get another 20% of your business. So it's going to sit there. If you ever need it, that's how it'll work. Okay, now none of this really matters because in reality, Scooter's never going to touch that $100 million. He doesn't want it. And Waddell & Reed don't want to give it to him. They're literally just putting it there so they can meet the requirements that their investors have. It's got to be $400 million. Fine. Here's $100 million in escrow. Everyone's happy. And the reason we know for sure that Scooter is not going to touch that $100 million is because he doesn't want to lose control of his company, right? He now owns 51%. Waddell & Reed own 49%. They know he doesn't want to give up any more of the company. So this $100 million is really just a placeholder to make everyone happy. And the reason I'm emphasizing this $100 million so much, guys, is because it's going to be very, very important and very consequential. In just 1 minute. Hang on, I'll get there. So the deal closes and Scooter gets straight to work. He starts spending that $160 million war chest that they gave him. He buys 50% of this management firm called Atom Factory. They manage Lady Gaga, John Legend, Meghan Trainor. He buys a 50% stake in Drake's management company. Drake's one of the most streamed artists, I think the most streamed artist of the decade. Buys the firm that manages Bruno Mars, Lizzo, Charlie XCX, another firm that manages Casey Musgraves, Faith Hill, Tim McGraw. So he's buying up management companies one by one, and he's just putting them into his company. He probably had the biggest music management company in the world at one point, at least one of the biggest. And at this point, he also creates a new company called Ithaca Holdings. So sometimes when you come across Scooter Braun's story, you'll see two main companies. There's SB Projects, which is the one we've been talking about this whole time. And then there's Ithaca Holdings, which is basically just a holding company for all these different management firms he's buying. So remember, he was doing $26 million in profit in 2012, and flash forward a few years, he's now at $80 million in profit after all this growth and all these acquisitions. And then in 2016, something bad happens. The stock market is crashing. Now, this isn't particularly bad for Scooter. It's actually going to be very good, but it's bad for his partners at Waddell & Reed. They're a publicly traded company, and they've fallen on hard times like a lot of Wall Street firms did at that time. And these guys need liquidity. They need cash money, and they need it right now. They need it fast. And that $100 million that's parked in an escrow account with Scooter's name on it right now is looking pretty good. We'd love to get our hands on that. Remember, I told you this money would be consequential. Well, that time has come. So Scooter sees a real opportunity here, and he approaches Waddell and Reed with an offer they can't refuse. He says, guys, today you own 49% of my company. I'd like to buy 40% of my company back from you for $100 million with a few conditions. Number one, you have to give up your board seat. I don't want you guys on my board. I don't want you guys controlling or having day-to-day say in my company. Number two, you've got to give up all your pref shares. So generally speaking, when a company on Wall Street invests in a firm, they get what are called preference shares or pref shares, and they have certain rights and certain authority, and they're better than common shares. So, Scooter doesn't want them having those shares anymore. We're all on the same even keel playing field. You guys have the same shares as I do. And number three, I want the right to buy back that remaining 9% from you at a later time at an agreed upon fair price. So I'll take 40% now, but I want the option to buy that 9% at a later time. Waddell and Reed responds, where do we sign? They take this deal. It's too good to be true. $100 million cash money right now. I'll take it. So to recap, what's just happened? Scooter sold them 49% of his company a few years ago for $400 million. And he's now buying back almost all of it for $100 million, plus a bunch of gravy on the side. And now he's got a company doing $80 million in annual profit, almost triple what it was before he sold to Waddell and Reed. And now he owns almost the whole thing. He owns 91% of this baby. So a year goes by, and Scooter's been building, and Scooter's been working, and now he decides, you know what? I want that 9% back. So in 2017, he does another one of his legendary deals, this time with Carlyle Group. Now, Carlyle is a huge private equity firm, and Scooter comes to an agreement with Carlyle that they're going to buy 30% of his company. But the deal is going to work like this. The 9% that Waddell and Reed still owns, Carlyle's going to buy that. And remember, Scooter has the right to force Waddell and Reed to sell that 9% at his own option. So there's nothing that says he has to buy it. He can simply give that option to Carlyle, and Carlyle says, great, we'll put up the cash, we'll buy it. In addition to that, Scooter sells another 20% of his own stake to Carlyle Group for $120 million. So he's now taken off the table another $120 million for himself. And pause here for a second. I know doing math on podcasts is like the worst thing in the world, but I gotta just highlight this. He has now taken off the table between these two deals in 2012 and now 2017, $260 million. And he still owns, at this point, 70% of the company. But we're not even done, because now we're into what may be one of the biggest music deals ever done. This is 2018, and Scooter has a thesis. He believes that masters are going to be worth a lot of money in the years ahead. Now, before I go any further, let me just give you guys a little background on the music business. Master recordings, or masters as they're known, are the original recordings of a song, the version that's streamed or sold or licensed. You hear it in movies, ads, and shows. Whoever owns the masters controls how the music is used and also makes most of the money when that music is played. Now, who owns the masters most of the time? It's the record labels. Artists don't own their own masters. That's incredibly, incredibly rare. That's also why when Spotify streams songs, the folks making the most money are the record labels, because they own the masters. Artists own something else, which is called the publishing rights, which is irrelevant for this conversation, but masters are the real ownership in songs. And in today's streaming economy, owning masters is like owning prime real estate, right? You've got Spotify, you've got Apple Music, you've got TikTok, you've got YouTube. Whenever these guys stream a song, whenever you listen to a song on any of those platforms, they pay a fee to whoever owns the masters. And that's why, again, Spotify pays so much money to the record labels. The bulk of their revenue goes straight to the labels. And like I said, Scooter has this thesis. He has this belief that masters are going to go up in value big time for the exact reason that I just mentioned, right? You've got all these streaming platforms. They have this endless need for music. So masters have to go up. And by the way, Scooter wasn't the only person who had this belief. Lots of people had this exact belief, but Scooter was in a position to capitalize on it because he's got a lot of money, he's got a lot of power at this point. So he needs to buy a record label. And that's exactly what he's about to do. Scooter approaches a guy named Scott Borchetta, who owns a Nashville label called Big Machine Label Group. And this is where the story gets really, really juicy because Big Machine owns the masters of some pretty big country names like Luke Combs, Rascal Flatts, and a little artist named Taylor Swift. And this is how Scooter will come into possession of Taylor Swift's masters and cause a whole lot of drama. Now, as a side note, the Taylor Swift masters that we're talking about here are from roughly the first 10 years of her music career. So it's her 2006 album, which is called Taylor Swift, then Fearless, Speak Now, Red, 1989, and Reputation, which was 2017. That's all owned by Big Machine. So it's 2019 and Scooter makes an offer to buy Big Machine. And other players are at the table too. Universal Music is bidding, Warner Music wants it, they're making a bid too. And even Taylor Swift herself is taking a look, not at the whole label, but at her own portfolio of masters. Now, at some point, Taylor bows out. There's actually a Tumblr blog post from June 2019 where Taylor explains that she did have a chance to earn back the rights to her masters, but that deal felt unfair to her, so she passed. And as a side note, I'm not sure, I did some research, I can't quite figure out why Taylor couldn't just buy the whole record label. Now, obviously, Taylor Swift is an artist and not necessarily in the market to buy a label, but she's no ordinary artist. She's very astute. She has a brilliant team around her. So I'd assume that if she wanted to buy the label, she could have kicked in a few $1,000,000 of her own, raised hundreds of millions of dollars from private equity, and purchased it, just like any other buyer would have done. But for whatever reason, she passes. So the sale happens, and Scooter winds up buying the label for $330 million. And this is where the internet melts down. Taylor says that she's been blindsided. Scooter says her team knew the deal was happening all along. In fact, Taylor's dad is on the board at Big Machine, so he had to actually sign off on the deal, but it doesn't matter. The drama has begun. And I'm not going to get into the drama on this podcast. I want to stick to the deals and the dollars. And the next deal is so good. It's so good, guys. All right, so let's recap where we are now. Scooter has just paid $330 million for Big Machine. And inside Big Machine, among other assets, are these Taylor Swift masters. And those masters are valued at about $140 million. So roughly 40% of the purchase price that Scooter just paid was just the value of Taylor Swift's music, about 40%. But there's one other factor that we need to consider, kind of a curveball. So after Scooter closed the deal and took ownership of Big Machine, Taylor announces that she's going to re-record all her albums, all her songs. She's going to come out with Taylor's versions of everything because she doesn't want Scooter or anyone else to profit off her early work. And she has the right to do that. She's going to effectively create new masters and she's going to own them outright. And I remember hearing this at the time and thinking to myself, whoever just did that deal to buy those masters, I didn't know it was Scooter Braun at the time, kind of sucks for them because I bet you that's going to bring down the whole value of the portfolio, right? Maybe not. Scooter has other thoughts. So Scooter again pulls off a really, really smart maneuver. He starts shopping around the Taylor Swift catalog to investors to see if anybody wants to buy it. Not the whole record label, not all of Big Machine, just the Taylor Swift masters. And he gets some interest from this firm called Shamrock Capital. Now, Shamrock is actually the family office of the Disney family, so there's a lot of Hollywood connections going on here. Scooter's negotiating the sale with Shamrock, and Taylor makes this big announcement. She's going to re-record all her masters, and of course, Shamrock gets cold feet. They're not sure if they should be moving forward with this deal if Taylor's going to kind of devalue everything they just bought. And so Scooter says, wait a minute, guys, wait a minute, hang on. Think about this for a second. Taylor's going to re-record her first 6 albums. Basically, everyone is going to be listening to these albums as though they're new, because in a way they are. She's just re-recording them. The biggest star in the world is breathing new life into this old catalog. And everyone's going to listen not only to the new recordings, but they're going to listen to the old recordings because they're going to want to compare and contrast. They're going to want to hear the differences. This won't devalue the catalog. It's actually going to increase the value of the catalog. So Shamrock takes Scooter's word for it. He hasn't been wrong too many times before when it comes to music. They buy the Taylor Swift masters for, get this, $405 million. That's right, $405 million. Scooter just spent $330 million on Big Machine, the entire record label. And now he's selling about 40% of it for over $400 million. He's already made a profit and he still owns everything else. Now, there's also a little Easter egg in this story that I got to drop right now. I love this part. Before Scooter pulls the trigger with Shamrock, he actually has conversations, many conversations with Taylor Swift's team, and he's trying really hard to get them to buy the masters. I think he was offering them to Taylor for about $300 million, knowing that they were worth a lot more. He'd be getting more if he just sold them to Shamrock, but he wants to give Taylor the chance to buy them for herself. And I actually know the name of the guy on Taylor's team who Scooter was negotiating with. I'm not going to share that name here, but he turned Scooter down for whatever reason. It's unclear if he ever even brought the deal to his boss, Taylor Swift. And like a week after Scooter's deal closes with Shamrock, Taylor fires the guy who had the conversation with Scooter and had the chance to buy those masters. Because obviously she would have gotten a great deal if she had bought them herself. All this is just a crazy extension of the story. I think it's probably 80 or 90% true. Who knows? But wow. Wow, is this a good story. Anyhow, let's go now to the last big deal in the story of Scooter Braun. And that's the final sale of Scooter's company to Hybe, a big South Korean record label. In 2021, a story leaks in the media that Scooter Braun is in talks to sell his company, Ithaca Holdings, to Blackstone for a reported $900 million. Now, nobody was authorized to talk about this sale because it was still being negotiated, and it was very, very true, but it leaked into the media. Scooter was, in fact, doing this deal. He was going to sell to Blackstone for $900 million, and the deal was taking a bit longer than it should have, so maybe somebody on the inside got frustrated and leaks the deal to the press. Okay, so Scooter is now 4 days away from closing this $900 million deal, and he's at a tarot card reading. Now, you should know Scooter is a very spiritual person. He's actually there, I would assume, to learn about his love life, because around this time in 2021, he is going through a separation from his wife. And during this tarot card reading, apparently, the woman who is reading him his cards says to him, you know, I can see you're doing a big business deal right now, and I have to tell you, don't do it. You got to wait 2 weeks before you do anything at all. And Scooter turns to her and says something like, well, what are you talking about? I'm actually here to talk about my love life. I'm not even here to talk about business. And I don't want to wait 2 weeks to get this deal done. And the tarot card reader says, I know, but trust me, you can't do this deal. You got to hold off. So Scooter tells his team, hold off on this deal. And they do. His team waits. Blackstone is waiting. Everyone's getting very antsy, very impatient. 1 week goes by. Nothing happens. 2 weeks go by, and Scooter gets a phone call from JP Morgan. And the bankers at JP Morgan say that Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of Hybe, wants to buy Ithaca. And they know he's in talks with Blackstone. So what will it take for this deal to happen? Scooter's got to leave his deal with Blackstone, abandon $900 million. So Scooter does some math and comes out with a price tag, $1.2 billion. There's some back and forth. They pencil it all out. And on April 2nd, 2021, it's announced that Hybe is buying Ithaca Holdings for $1.2 billion. Just 2 months before Scooter's 40th birthday. And this is the final transaction of the company that Scooter Braun started almost 2 decades ago. So let's recap, starting with the $1,800 in 2006, almost losing it all, but making $150,000 back in the nick of time. Then taking SB Projects to $26 million in annual profit by the time he was 30. Then selling half his company to Adele and Reed for $400 million. Then buying it back for $100 million. Then selling a chunk of it again to Carlyle Group, pocketing hundreds of millions more. And then selling it for a third time to Hybe. Wow. So there's a whole bunch of takeaways from this story, and I wrote a couple of them down. And the first one was that if you really think about it on a super basic level, Scooter is a bootstrapper. He is bootstrapping this company the whole time. He's taking $1,800 and he's hustling hard and he's going and going and going. And this isn't your typical tech company where you're going to raise venture capital and try to sell for $1 billion, but Scooter actually ends up doing that. But think about what he did along the way. He was taking money off the table strategically. And by the way, guys, he was already really rich by the time he even made that first deal in 2012 and took $140 million in his pocket. His company was making $26 million in annual profit. When you've got $26 million coming in cash flow in your bank account at the end of the year, believe me, you're living a very, very good life. Yes, I'm sure $140 million buys you a few more things, but you're not hurting either way. So the cash flow gave him the patience and the ability to grow slowly. And he grew actually pretty quick because he happened to sign some of the biggest artists in the world. But then he goes ahead and sells a piece of the company, takes cash off the table. Then he strategically buys it back. Then he sells it again, buys it back. And then he has this final exit at the end. When I started this podcast, I told you he made over $660 million. That was only his share off the very last sale to Hybe. He had already made hundreds of millions of dollars even before that. So the lesson here is to think about it. Don't go for this 1 in a billion shot where you've got to sell the whole thing all or nothing. There are opportunities to take cash off the table in many, many instances. And I see so many founders who are so blindly dedicated to their business that they don't take $1 in secondary capital. They don't take any of the profit, any of that cash flow, and put it in their pocket. Guys, you've got to look out for yourself. It doesn't matter how well you think your company's going to do in the future. You want to live large today. So whoever you are, wherever you are, building whatever kind of company you want to build, make sure that you're living well, you're not starving for dollars, so that you can look out for those great opportunities and take them when they come. The second really big takeaway that I got from this was that Scooter's skill goes way beyond music. Way beyond music. If you want to have a big financial outcome, you need to understand capital allocation. Where to invest your time, where to invest your money for the biggest ROI. Sometimes you got to put your head down and grow organically, and sometimes you should look around and see how you can bulk up by combining with others. But think about how financial engineering and all those deal points really, really helped. And maybe Scooter had a lot of great lawyers and advisors and consultants around him. I'm sure he does. But ultimately, it's understanding how to maneuver yourself beyond. Again, capital allocation. I cannot stress those two words enough. You have to understand not only how to run your company, but how to allocate capital and allocate resources effectively to get the most out of everything you build. Now, there's so much more to this story. Believe it or not, Scooter is actually a very, very successful tech investor. He's a shareholder in Uber, Waze, Dropbox, Lyft, Row. There's a story where he meets Mark Zuckerberg in 2006 and has this whole opportunity to buy a big stake in Meta, then Facebook. I'm not going to get into that all now. There's so much more to share. Maybe at some point we'll have Scooter on the podcast. He can tell the story himself, or I can do a part 2. You guys let me know. That's the story of Scooter Braun. That's the story of SB Projects, Ithaca Holdings. Get my best stuff to your inbox at jondavids.com.